Good morning, aspirant. Today, once again, I'm back with new topic, new subject, and with new energy. I hope everyone is doing good. We have left with only 13 weeks, 5 days for the mains preparation. Then we will start our prelims firefighting. So I just want to tell you guys, don't be complacent. Winter is coming, particularly those who are in the subtropical areas in Delhi NCR. Don't be complacent. Don't waste your time. Focus on remaining 13 weeks, 5 days for your mains combined with prelims preparation. Then dedicatedly you can start with your prelims preparation. Particularly I'm talking about those aspirants who want to give 2026 attempt. Even though you have written the mains, even though you are confident, but don't lose the track. Okay, don't lose the track. Focus on the track and be on the track until and unless your name should be in that golden UPSC list. Okay, so with these new positive thoughts, I'm going to start the topic. Our today's topic is IR, and as Monday I have mentioned, today is our IR. And IR, as we know, recent 3 to 4 years, there are many questions coming on the IR, particularly the places in the news, rebellion groups, international institutions, their mandate, their role, conventions. So in mains, UPSC have a very good pattern. That is, there are 6 to 7 points. Means India, Indian neighborhoods, political development in the developed countries, and their impact on India's interest. There is one point in the UPSC GS2 syllabus IR portion. Okay, the point is this: UPSC GS2 syllabus. We have international organizations, their mandate, their role, and their significance. Okay, and UPSC earlier had asked the question on mandate of WHO, ILO, UNSC, then International Maritime Organization. So it becomes pertinent for us to study our international organizations. These are in the news. Okay, basically we are discussing the broader framework of the international politics, that is UN. So our first topic, obviously, the UN. Why I have chosen this topic? Because this is a September month, and the last 21st to 28th, there will be the every year annual session of UNGA. Now, what is UNGA? I am going to discuss what is the UNGA, but overall UNGA is one of the part of UN system. Okay, we have to study UN, then UN, various organs of UN, and various treaties of UN. Okay, and UN specifically has mentioned the optional syllabus also, and our UPSC GS2 syllabus also. Okay, so let's start. Come along with me. I am going to start first. First is what exactly the United Nations in the 21st century, the relevance, crisis, and way forward. There are a number of questions on the UN, exactly UN treaties, UNSC conventions, UNGA membership, and in mains always there is one question on the UN related affiliated bodies, UN related affiliated institutions. So this is the main our topic. But if you see recent, always the what is the relevance of UN, why we want UN. If you see the UN is global system. Okay, global governance system, and that system origin trace back to the post World War II order, that is so called a liberal order. Liberal order means P5 countries contributed to set up something institution, and that institution should make world stable. But if we see the Gaza crisis, if we see the Ukraine crisis, then Thailand Cambodia issue, then Greenland issue, then Canada issue, then migration issue, then climate refugee crisis, all this becomes raise the questions on the UN relevance. Okay, so in this in this heading, means in this topic, we are going to discuss what exactly the UN principal organs, okay, and then we are going to discuss relevance of the UN, then what is the exact criticism and why many countries including India is criticizing the UN mandate, and then suggested way forward, suggested by the commission, suggested by the scholars. Okay, this will be our course of action in this article. Okay, so first let's start with why in the news. As I mentioned, the news is UN General Assembly session, 18th session in September 2025. And in this session, for the first time since 1990, there has been a new development. The development is that countries, UNGA countries, have decided that to let the Palestinian president to address the session. Okay, this resolution has been passed by the UNGA in the last week. Okay, the importance of this president means Palestine president address is very crucial, because USA always take a side of Israel, and other countries try to struggle to get the mandate. But now UNGA have passed the resolution to make the president of Palestine to address the session. Okay, and this means now it is becoming the global voice for the Palestinian statehood. If you see the yesterday's news, Australia, Canada, and France, they have officially recognized Palestine as a state. Okay, this is very important development at a global level. And being a PSIR student, and you also as a GS student, you should remember these developments will definitely, there is one question related to the UNGA or something related to the Palestine. And as earlier I told that this Palestine Israel issue is a perennial issue for the UPSC and very favorite topic of the UPSC. Okay, so why in the news? Because the UNGA have given permission to the president of Palestine to address the session. Okay, now before this, UNGA is just one organ of the United Nations. Now then tell me, what are the other organs of UN? So we are going to discuss all 6 organs of the UN. Okay, so the first organ is, this is the session, you can see what exactly the United Nations. As I mentioned, this is born in the post World War II to maintain the peace and security at a global level. Okay, so now first is United Nations General Assembly. The mandate of this assembly is this one: resolution, approve the passing budget, supporting the UNSC. This is a one organ. The next one is UNSC. If you see, always India want to be a part of UNSC. Why India want to be the part of UNSC? I am going to discuss in this article only, but later phase. But United Nations Security Council is the most important, called as a nerve center of the United Nations system, because United Nations Security Council have the power to pass the binding resolution. And at international fora, if any international institution, particularly UNSC, pass the resolution, that is binding on the state. Okay, for the any means UN parties. So it becomes very important to study UNSC, UNGA, and third one ICJ. Okay, this is also one of the organization which works in the domain of the socio-economic development, education, FAO, exam. These are the sub organs of the United Nations Council on Social Security. Okay, then now the ICJ. You heard about the Mauritius issue of Chagos Archipelago. Okay, and many issues like Israel, Palestine, everything. So this is a judicial wing. This is a judicial wing of UN. Okay, in UN, in simple language, there are certain executive wing, there are certain legislative wing. So in executive wing, you can see United Nations Security and Economic Council, then UNSC Executive Council, and legislative wing UNGA. Okay, and the judicial wing ICJ. This is like state at a national level and UN at a global level. So just this is a simple idea for you guys to just understand what exactly the UN. Okay, ICJ, International Court of Justice, is one of the part of UN system, but not the International Criminal Court, ICC, Rome. and Paris. You have to remember the Hague Convention and Rome Convention. Okay, so this is a one organ, that is executive. Now secretariat and trusteeship council. This trusteeship council does not exist now in 21st century because the mandate of trusteeship council was to rebuild Europe post World War II. Okay, so these are the principles. As such, this organization trusteeship council exists, but it does not work functionally in that domain. Okay, so these are the 6 principal organs of UN. Now we are going to discuss what exactly UN has contributed, as I mentioned. Okay, and I was just about to discuss we will discuss the UNGA, and first is UNSC. We will discuss the individual organs, then we will discuss the what exactly the criticism of UN. First is why UNSC. As I mentioned, UNSC is the only body of UN system which have the mandate to pass the binding resolution. Okay, that's why UNSC matters a lot compared to the other UNGA or other organs. Even ICJ have the binding mandate, but the implementation is depend on the state. UNSC more specifically have the means so-called elite power. We can say that the UNSC is a group of elite power, and this UNSC meets on fortnightly also. Okay, and at various forum, unlike the UNGA annual summit, but UNSC is executive deliberative daily fortnightly meetings are there. Okay, and recently if you see, most of the time there are debate, India Pakistan criticizing each other at the UNSC platform, and India is become the member of this UNSC non-permanent member for the 8th time. The recent term of India was in 2021-22. Okay, so this is a very good platform to raise the voices for the any international global issue, that may be the your disarmament, human rights, or any issue, refugee council, refugee crisis. So UNSC becomes permanent and becomes nerve center of the UN system. Okay, so this is a legally binding as I authorization for the, and one more mandate of the UNSC is to add any of the new member in UN. Okay, and this is the reason Palestine is not a member of the UN system officially. Palestine is not a full-time member. Okay, to be specific, Palestine is not a full-time member. The reason is this: USA always block the resolution, past resolution taken forwarded in UNSC, because it is once the process of admission of the state in UNSC. This is I will discuss, because in 2022 UPSC asked the question in prelims how the member is added in UN system. The simple member addition is any sovereign state which abide the UN charter, they can be added as a UN full-time member. But the process, UNSC should approve this resolution, and in this process what US is doing related to the Palestine is, whenever the resolution will come, UNSC resolution will come, USA will have veto power, and this is done by USA several times. That's why Palestine is not a member, full-time member of the UN. Okay, and if any country become the member of UN, what are the benefits? That is collective security. Our one of the former diplomat, India's Syed Akbaruddin Sir said that particularly UN is a game of small countries because it provides a collective security. Just think about, India is capable of protecting its own territory. Just think about the Bhutan. Just think about the Trinidad and Tobago, or any small country, Bermuda you can say, Grenada you can say. All these countries are the members of UN, and they, once they become the member of UN, so UN will provide the collective security. This is the reason Palestine want to be a full-time member of the UN. Okay, and this is why letting the Palestine president to address the UNGA session, it's become crucial. So this is just one mandate of our UNSC. There are two things: deployment of the humanitarian aid, their legal, passing the legal binding resolution in the any domain, UNSC can pass, and the third one, the admission of the new member. This is the mandate of the UNSC. Now comes to the, this is UNSC meeting. Now comes to the particular, why I discuss the UNSC, because UNSC, they have asked the UNSC's mandate. UNSC means UPSC had asked earlier ki what exactly the UNSC mandate and why India want to be the member of UNSC. So this is just one dimension. ICJ you can discuss, then the UNGA you can discuss, but UNSC is important, so I took UNSC's significance. Now overall, in broader perspective, I am going to discuss how in last 80 years UN has functioned. Okay, and has been functioning from since 1945 to 2025. Okay, so these are the particularly 80 years, and in this 80 years address, UN Secretary General specifically said that ki UN Charter is not optional and it is not necessary, and it is not for the one country to fulfill its national interest. It is for all and it is for humanity. And even there is one common premise: either you criticize it, or either you reject it, or either you denounce it, but UN have relevance, and UN has been the relevant since 1945. This the best example is there is no third world war. Okay, this is the best example which shows that how UN is relevant. Now we are going to discuss particular domain of UN success. Okay, so first will be the conflict prevention and peacekeeping. If you see Korean War 1952, India was the first country who contributed in the Korean War through the UN peacekeeping, because we follow the doctrine of Vasudev Kutumbakam. Now the human rights, UN resolution on the human rights, UN declaration of the human rights 1948. Okay, and then the refugee convention of 1951. There are n number of the ILO is also affiliated body to the UN. So if the question came in your answer, that is the how the relevant UN is relevant, so you should break it down in different domain. First is peace and security, second one will be the your decolonization, third one will be the human rights, fourth one is disarmament, fifth one will be the labor rights, the seventh one will be the protecting the sovereignty. If you see the Gulf War, if you see the Arab crisis, and if you see the 2005 the war on Iraq and the war on terrorism, all this shows that the certain success of the UN and the protecting the WHO's role in H1N1 2002. Then I'm just discussing, I will write here for your reference. This is conflict. Here you can mention the Namibia, Cambodia. They are just successful missions, successful operations where the coup has prevented. Okay, and right now around 35 plus missions of UN peacekeeping are deployed. The first one response was Korean War. Okay, and India played a crucial role in this peacekeeping. Okay, now decolonization. If you see post UN formation to 2025, whole African continent become the independent from the colonial power. That is also success of UN. Now the next one is UNDHR, United Nations Declaration on the Human Rights, is the best example and the success of the UN. Still we give the reference, even our the constitution mentioned that we have taken certain provisions from the UN Declaration on the Human Rights, and same question UPSC asked in 2020, what are the sources of our fundamental rights? Okay, sources, the which of the following provisions influence the India's fundamental rights in the constitution? Okay, this was 2020 prelims. Done. Now the global health, WHO, as we know, the protection, we have recently seen the new 7 sites of India's added in the tentative list of UNESCO. UNESCO is one of the organ which is protecting and propagating the peace through preservation of the culture and diversity at a global level. Okay, similarly UNICEF is proponent of child rights and child security. Okay, so there are n number of organs of UN which are positively contributing and showing the relevance of UN system. So if anyone asks you what is the relevance of UN, you should be able to break down it in the different domain. From the women, UN Women Council is there, the UNESCO is there, cultural preservation, then the UN Charter, UNICLOS. We always used to say that the protection of the sea and protection of the global commons. Okay, UNICLOS 1982. This convention demarcate the exactly global commons and how we protect the our high seas. Okay, and one more is global nuclear order. In this domain also, NPT and the other CTBT and the recently comprehensive ban treaty of 2021 has been adopted by the UN. So in nuclear domain also, UN is contributing positively. Okay, so you should remember these are the success of UN. And the most recent is Paris Agreement 2015 and the adoption of Sustainable Development Goal. Though it is voluntary, though it is dependent on the state, but it shows the state commitment to the international law and international order. Because if procedure is there, there will be no chaos. One of the political science scholar preferably said that if there is no law, if there is no law, no liberty. Similarly, for the state, if there is no international law, there will be the no liberty. Okay, so these are the success of UN. Now if we come across these are the success, but does it mean that UN path since last 80 years is smooth? No, answer is no. The reason is this: there are Rwandan crisis, then the continuously the Israel-Palestine issue, then the inability of the UN to stop the Israel-Gaza and the Russian-Ukraine conflict shows that there is certain lacunas in the UN framework, and there is a exclusivity policy of UN that makes certain challenges for UN to be relevant. So now we are obviously going to discuss what exactly the challenges of UN system, what exactly the criticism of UN system through example. Okay, so let's discuss the first challenge of UN system is geopolitical paralysis. This means that when UN formed 1945 till 1991, there was one block. There was block is the US led one block and the USSR led another block. This made UN to fully paralyzed. There was certain conventions. Sometimes sometimes USA will veto, sometimes USSR will veto. Okay, so these were the triggering point that made UN to question its relevance. Despite this thing, 1992, then 1965 NPT that shows the relevance. But this is one of the, and the same scenario is at a present level is arising, and it has been arising in 2025 is that China led one block, China, Russia. This is P2, generally we called as P2 versus P1, P2. It means that P2, China and Russia, P1, USA, and this P2 is France and UK. This is the policy paralysis at a global. That's why the most of the resolution in recent terms is being failed in UNSC and or in the UNGA because of this Cold War mentality in the Cold War 2.0. This is the first criticism and this is the first challenge UN system is facing. The second one is veto deadlock, as this is related to the UNSC. 2 days back only, USA vetoed the resolution on the Palestine and criticizing the resolution on Israel. Okay, so UNSC deadlock. The third one is UNGA related problems. Okay, the third one will be legitimacy crisis. This is the point, but still, if you want to write answer, then may start with UNSC issues, then UNGA issues, then ICJ issues, then trusteeship issues, and the last will be your UNESCO Security Council, UN Economic and Social Security Council. Okay, Social Security Council, this issue. So it will be easy for you to write at least 2 points in this domain. So you will be able to write at least 10 points. And what matters is writing the points in answers. Okay, so we have discussed the all these issues are related to the UNSC. Now we are going to discuss issues related to the UNGA. What are the issues related to the UNGA? The first is slow process, slow decision making. The first and foremost UNGA criticism is there is very slow decision making in the UNGA. And why we want to discuss this slow UNGA, this issue? If you remember, the 2022 UPSC asked in prelims the credential committee on credentials. This committee on credentials, which is very crucial role, committee on credentials, crucial role in UNGA functioning. Okay, this is exactly asked by UPSC in 2022 prelims. They are meeting everything, and every country nominate their some representative, and this committee cross check the exactly the credibility of the particular representative. Okay, so that's why we are discussing the challenges faced by the UN, in that also challenges faced by the UNGA: slow decision making, the legal hurdles, then the consensus building. All these are the challenges faced by UNGA. Now, if we come to the ICJ, International Court of Justice, okay, here also, despite 2019 ruling, the implementation of ICJ's or judgments has been paralyzed by UK itself. UK, being a permanent member of UNSC, is not enforcing the Chagos Archipelago judgment of ICJ. It shows that how the UN system is vulnerable to the whims and to the whims and the particular national interest of the state, so-called UK. And USA also same doing, despite, and UK voluntarily decided to respect the law in 2024. UK decided to give that Chagos Archipelago to the Chagos Archipelago sovereignty to the Mauritius. Okay, this is the ICJ related issue. Now, even in case of the Economic and Social Council, there also UNESCO's list, selective action, the UNHRC action, these are many times under the scrutiny, because if you see UNHRC, we are going to discuss this is our next topic. Saudi Arabia and authoritarian regimes become members of UNHRC, propagating the protective, means this is the thing that we are going to protect the money. This is the thing. Authoritarian countries become the members of UNHRC to protect and uphold the human rights right. And even though they are within their own country, they are violating the human rights. This is a tragedy related with them. This is the tragedy. This is a contradiction in the United Nations Economy and Security Council. So do mention this all the 6 to 7 points in your answers whenever you will write answer on UN. Okay. So does it mean that really there is no way forward, or there is no way to make a reform UN, or UN is dead? So answer is no. Okay, answer is no. The reason is this: there are attempts, there are chances, there are solutions provided by the expert members, provided by the scholars to reform the UN, and UN process is undergoing the transformation. As our honorable Prime Minister said that the software of 20th century cannot work in the 21st century computer. So there are suggestions, there are recommendations which can, if implemented, will be make UN more relevance in today's 21st century. Okay, so now we are going to discuss what exactly we can make UN more representative. The first one is cooperation in functional areas. Functional areas mean the areas where country can cooperate: UNFCCC, environment, EVS diplomacy, then human rights diplomacy, then upholding the international law, and gradually reforming the non-veto power of UNSC members, expanding the UNSC in simple, and speeding up the process of UNGA. Okay, so these are the reforms which makes UN more visible in the global crisis uncertainty world order. Okay, so now the first is UNFCCC. At least all the countries are have one convergence on the UNFCCC issue, that is the climate change. So it is the responsibility of the developed countries, and it is the responsibility of developing countries to be to be the contributor in the UNFCCC mandate. And that's why every year we used to see COP 2026, COP 20, COP 30, and UPSC asked question on this in 2025 means GS3 paper, what exactly the India's commitment in COP 2020, COP 26, that is the Glasgow Summit 2021. Okay, so in climate diplomacy, all the countries can contribute because the climate is not a issue related with one particular country. It is a planetary issue, and as earlier I said that the environment issues are not related to particular individual, not related to a particular country, but these are the planetary issues, and we should tackle the planetary issue in this domain. UN is more relevant, and UN have the power, have the mandate to take care of the climate change. Okay, so this will be the first where we can at least kickstart the convergence of the both blocks, China-led bloc and USA-led bloc. Okay, the second comes to the human rights. Okay, even though the concept of human rights is most contested concept, because Western countries said the relative political rights, and the Asian value concept, the Bhikkhu Parex, the so-called multiculturalist concept, shows that there is certain values in Eastern world also. But no one can deny the values, the rights, human dignity, basic minimum requirements given in the UN Declaration on Human Rights. So in human right domain, UN can work more by contributing, taking the help of the countries. For example, India, and India is voluntary, though not a member of the UN Refugee Convention. India is voluntary on the case by case accepting the refugee. Okay, and this is our next topic, UN refugee. But this is one of the domain UN can work together, UN members can work together. The next one will be the UNSC reforms. There are suggestions given by the former Secretary General Kofi Annan that at least we can not given the veto right to the UNSC members, but at least we can increase the permanent members. Okay, and there was one attempt in 1976 that the membership of UN increased from 9 to 15. Year might be the wrong, but earlier there was 9 members only. Originally 9 members, P5 permanent and 4 non-permanent member, that will change on a biannual basis. Now the total UNSC membership is 15. This has increased earlier, and the same Kofi Annan said that we can expand this more. At least we can include the countries like India, countries like Germany, countries, okay, this is the same point mentioned, Japan, or at least 1 or 2 countries from the African continent. Just imagine your whole village is, or village, city is not represented at a decision making body at a global level. How this is a deprivation, this is a fully discrimination. I would say this is a fully discrimination, and that is the reason when American Revolution happened, that no representation, no voting rights, no representation. That was the slogan. Okay, no taxation without representation. Similarly, African continent is governed by UN system, but no African country is permanent member in UNSC. This is a dichotomy of 20th century UN system, and that's why everyone is recommending, particularly the countries like India, Japan, and Germany, to reform the UN system to make it more visible, to make it more relevant in 21st century. So this is one of the recommendations to expand the membership of UNSC. Then the next comes to the ICJ. Every country, despite their national interest, should uphold the International Court of Justice mandate. This is either you are the big power, or either you are superpower, or either you are Bermuda, like small country. But you should uphold the rule of the law, because if one country violates the law, then other country, there will be the chaos, and the chaos, uncertainty will prevail, and that will lead to as we had seen in 1941, that is World War. Okay, so we should uphold the ICJ judgment. We means countries, sovereign nation should uphold the mandate of ICJ. Okay, this will be the fourth recommendation. The fifth recommendation will be where UN can work more closely is resolution, easy resolution, fast resolution, passing of the UNGA, because UNGA is a principal and world's largest governance body, principal organ of United Nations system, and the largest assembly of the head of the state or the representatives. Okay, so in this domain, speedy decision making is one of the recommendations to make UN more relevant. Okay, and so this is one of the domain, but the new threats like security threat from the non-state actor need to be adopted in UN system. Earlier, when UN charter was adopted in 1945, there was very less known terrorism kind of things. But if we see the Pahalgam attack in India, or is there Houthi attack in Israel, or lone wolf warrior attack in USA, that shows the current scenario of the terrorism as a threat to the global peace and security. Earlier, there was just threat from the state, but now the non-state actors are creating new threats to the sovereign state. And here, UN roles become more important. So consensus building among the UN members is perennial importance. Okay, so UN can be work to contain the terrorism, and as we know the UNSC resolution 121267 talks about particularly the containment of this non-state actor threats. Okay, so but the implementation of this resolution is still pending, and still pending in certain domains, and this resolution is also hampered by the power politics of, certainly if you see the most of the time India criticizes China because of its double standard on the terrorism. The reason is this: China preferred selective addition of the terrorist group in the UN terrorist list. Okay, so there in this domain UN can work more promptly. At least country can collaborate in this UN, in this domain, terrorism domain. Okay, so this is overall our discussion on what is UN, what are the organs of UN, then what are the mandates of that organ, why UNSC matters a lot compared to the other organs, what are the criticism of UN system, and what are the areas where UN can work, and what are the recommendations which will make UN more comprehensive, more inclusive. Okay, so ultimately is all about the trust between the nation, and it is a trust between all the representative of the state to make UN more responsible. And as I said, when UN formed in 1945, there was consensus on the peace and security at all across the continent, across the countries. Same consensus at a present is need of an hour. The reason is this: people are starving in Gaza, Israel, then people are suffering, victims of terrorist attack in Pahalgam, or else people are being killed by terrorist organization in Germany or USA. So it is the matter of time, it is a matter of every country should think twice before taking any unilateral action and should uphold the UN system. This is the ultimate aim, and this should be the ultimate aim and objective of any country being a part of this global commons. As India, proponent of the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, always said that this whole world is one family. So similarly, this one family should be guarded by the father, that is UN system. Okay, so UN should work, and UN is relevant. This work of how to work, that can be managed by the independent countries, because family is one family when all members act in tandem. If they are not acting in tandem, if they are acting in isolation, the family will not work in, and the family ultimately will collapse. So similarly, UN also should, all the members, UN members should work in tandem. Okay, by this note, I will end my discussion on this UN topic, and we will move forward to our next topic that is related to the UN system only. But to be the specific, why that topic in the news, what are the issues, we are going to discuss the new specific UN system structure, mandate, and one institution. Before that, there are questions I'm going to discuss on this UN system. Okay, this is conclusion. We can go through the conclusion, but do mention India's leadership role in UN peacekeeping, India's leadership role, and India is vocal for the global south, India is vocal for the UNSC reforms, because as a we are the members of, means we are writing UPSC exam, and UPSC always prepare to the our, there should be our own stand. Okay, so take a stand on India's peace diplomacy. Okay, so these are the exactly the UN. But in prelims and mains, how we can exactly ask the question, means what UPSC had asked earlier, UNSC UPSC had asked, then committee UNSC committee 106 UPSC had asked, then committee on credentials UPSC asked, the admission of new state in UNSC has in UN UPSC had asked earlier, then the human rights UPSC had asked earlier. These are the prelims question. So do refer all these questions and make the short notes for your next maybe chances there. And IR has become very important in last 3 to 4 years because of the global uncertainty. Okay. Now we will move to our next topic, that is UNHRC. And why this UNHRC? Because one of our active citizen of India who raised the banner at a UNHRC annual session about the Pahalgam terrorist attack. As I told earlier, every UN member should act in tandem to check and contain the terrorism. Okay, so but this is the news. Why exactly? The name of that particular Indian member is Javed Ahmad Beg, who strongly criticized the Pakistan's role. Remember this name, you can add this name in your GS4 answers. Okay, the dedication, then the patriotism towards your land, this name you can mention. So this is just why in the news. Now we are going to discuss what exactly the before this refugee name, I will discuss what exactly the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee. Before that, tell me, who are the refugees? Who are the refugees? And as I told you, UN work in many domains. This UNHRC is one of the UN organ. This UNHRC, UN, then UNGA, and then UNHRC. Okay. This UNHRC is a part and subsidiary body of the UNGA. Okay, United Nation Assembly. Okay, this is the one particularly the basic when this is for UNHRC, High Commissioner for the Refugee. So now tell me, who are the refugees? Is there any official definition of refugee at a global level or in India, in Indian constitution? Yes, there is an official definition of refugee that I have mentioned here. 1951 Convention of Refugee, Article A 1A2 says that a refugee is a person who, owing a well-founded fear being persecuted, reason, race, religion, nationality, membership. Okay, so this is a overall go through this definition. This definition matters a lot. The reason is this: people are getting the benefit. Some, because refugee, there is difference between the refugee and infiltrators. Okay, infiltrator, and one more concept is there, foreigners. This refugee, if you are refugee in any other country, that means you have certain rights according to the UN system. But if you are infiltrators, then you treated as a foreigner, alien alliance, alien, and there the prosecution will happen. But in refugee, if you see the Rohingya crisis, then the particular the Gaza crisis, once again these Gaza people are suffering, so they are refugees. Why? Because if you are notified refugee under UN system, then you will enjoy certain rights. That's why UN has recognized this issue and have adopted the Convention of 1951, Refugee Convention, and the Protocol of Madrid Protocol of 1967. Okay, so this is a just definition of the refugee. Before that, tell me why we are going to discuss this topic. What is the purpose of this topic we are discussing? As an aspirant, we should know. If you see 2022 question, okay, and 2021 question, there was one question on a refugee camp. Okay, in 2020 there was a question on climate refugees, London Convention. This is 2021 prelims question. That's why we are discussing this. And importantly, India is not a part of any UN refugee system, not a refugee convention of 1950 and not a Madrid Protocol of 1967. Okay, you have to remember, even India didn't sign, though supported from the outside, the London Convention, the New York Declaration, but India is not official part of any refugee convention of UN system. Okay, so because of this reason, we are discussing the refugee and UNHRC. Okay, this is now we are discussing what is UNHRC. As earlier I mentioned, UNHRC is a subsidiary body of United Nations Global Assembly. Okay, sorry, General Assembly. Then now the structure, and UPSC had asked earlier mandate of IMO, mandate of WHO. So you should remember the structure and mandate of UDHRC. Okay, URHRC. Done. Now the High Commissioner head, and they have executive officers, around 54 members, annually meeting, everything you should remember. Now come to the mandate. What is the mandate of UNHRC? Okay, the mandate is first ensuring that this protocol 1967, the 1951 convention, basically this refugee convention talks about broad. If you don't remember anything, just think about the refugee and why UN will adopt the refugee convention. The reason is to protect the refugee people. Because if you see the Rwandan crisis, if you see the Syrio-Linova crisis, then the Bosnia-Herzegovina crisis of 1993, the breakdown of Yugoslovakia, that led to mass refugee crisis. And this made UN system to act. And before this, there was one triggering point of the Korean War of 1950 and the refugee post-World War II. So in 1951 itself, UN adopted UN Refugee Convention. Okay, so mandate of this UNHRC is to protect the right, to protect the certain privileges and certain basic minimum requirement of the refugees, if they are notified, if they are identified. So what exactly UNHRC is doing? They have the regional offices and they provide the asylum in South Asia. In Delhi itself, there is one UNHRC office, regional office. Okay, though India is not a member, but India has given the privileges to UNHRC to set up their office in India and to look after the South Asian crisis, even the crisis of Tamilians, even the crisis of the LTT 1990s. If you remember the Myanmar Rohingya crisis, present crisis near to our border is Rohingya crisis, then Xinjiang provinces crisis of China. So all this becomes paramount and makes this UNHRC paramount to look after the rights and fundamental basic requirements of the particular refugee, because ultimately refugees are the human beings, and UN have UN declaration on the human rights 1948. Okay, so these are the mandates of the UNHRC. Okay, ensure the rights, asylum, finding the able solution will be the volunteer. That's why if you see recently there was a discussion going on between the around Rohingya crisis, either they will be adopted in the local Rakhine state or they will be given the special provision in Bangladesh settlement or Cox's Bazar. If you remember, UPSC asked the question on the refugee camp Cox's Bazar in the Bangladesh, Chittagong. And the third one option is the we can do, means UN system is saying, can you, the refugee people can be given to the any third party. Same thing happened in Jordan. Jordan is have largest world refugee camp, which is supporting Syrian crisis, people and Gaza people. Similarly, Sinai Peninsula providing asylum to the refugees of Gaza, means Gaza people. This is the mandate, and all these basic facilities, providing the aid to the people, providing the basic medical facilities, providing the education, all this look after by the UNHRC. This is the mandate of UNHRC. Okay, you have to remember this: material help, education help, taking care of the children, special care of the women, because ultimately if you see the any war happen, the first victims are children and women. So the mandate of UNHRC is to specially take care of the women and the senior citizens and children. Okay, so and this UNHRC work in tandem with the other UN bodies and other NGOs. So these are the mandates of UNHRC. Now tell me, the success of UNHRC. Earlier it is officially called as UNHCR, but since 2006, earlier it was a Human Rights Commissioner, so it is commonly called as either UNHCR or UNHRC. Okay, don't be confused between the what is a UNHRC and what is UNHCR. Before 2006, UN system of human rights called as UNHRC, High Commissioner for the Human Rights. That was renamed in 2006. So UNHRC we call. This is the success story of UNHRC. That is Hungarian crisis, uprising 1956. Then if you see, we have given official asylum to Dalai Lama. And why government of India is protecting Dalai Lama like anything? The reason is this: Dalai Lama is officially recognized as asylum taker in India. Dharmashala, we have provided land, and this is possible because of UNHRC efforts. Okay, and this crisis originated in 1960s. If you see the 1962 Indo-China War, post that China had, means fully acquired the Tibetan, Tibet lost the autonomy, and Dalai Lama just migrated to India. Okay, and we, as a respect of the internet, though we are not a member of UN Refugee Convention, we have given asylum and we have given the full support to the Dalai Lama. Okay, so this is one of the success of UNHRC. Now the next one is Rwandan crisis and Great Lake crisis of 90s. Okay, at this time, when 1994 there was ethnic cleansing in Rwanda happened, that time UNHCR supported people, those who might be, if you are aware about the what exactly happened in the Rwanda, what exactly happened in Bosnia Herzegovina. At that particular crucial moment, UNHRC stepped in to help the people and stood with for the human rights and UN mandate. So these are the successful stories and successful mandate, successful example of the UNHRC. Do mention this in your answers, because this will give additional edge. These examples are not in isolation. If we write just theory part, and if we don't justify with the practical example, you will get less mark comparatively the other your competitors who is mentioning the example. At least if you not remember the Bosnia Herzegovina or Rwanda, at least do mention the Dalai Lama, at least do mention the Cox's Bazar, the Rohingya crisis. Okay, even Tamil, we have three crises. First one is a Tamil LTT, then the Rohingya, second one the current going on, and Dalai Lama of 1960s. Okay, so these are the success stories of UNHRC. Now India's success. Even though India didn't sign the refugee convention, but India stood for the cause of human rights and human values. And in this contest, India had contributed, and India has been contributing in this domain in this way. First is cause for the Tamils. Second one is Dalai Lama support. And third one, even there are 40,000 Rohingyas staying in Delhi NCR and across the India. on the basis of humanitarian ground. Though India is not a member of refugee, those Western countries teaches us particularly about the human rights and human rights violation, minority rights violation. They should note that India is supporting this many Rohingyas, and what UK is doing, adopting adopting the act to settle down the migrant and refugees to the Rwanda because of money power. And this is the dichotomy of the present system, how the Western hypocrisy of Western countries. You can see the hypocrisy of Western country. The UK, our colonial master, enacting the law to transfer their refugees, transfer their migrant to the other territory, but not enacting, not accepting the refugee, despite the being a member of UN Refugee Convention. And India, though not a member of UN Refugee Convention, accepted 40,000 Rohingya people on the basis of humanitarian ground. This is the our policy of Vasudev Kutumbakam. Now, this is just one support. Chakma refugee, Tibetan refugee, Tamil refugee, Afghan refugee, Rohingya refugee. These are the best example you should write and mention not only in the GS2 but do mention in the GS4 when the constructive power question came, and UPSC is always asking the ethics in international politics. So do mention India's positive role. Okay, so this is a one dimension. Now, what exactly the tools in the hands, in the armory of the UNHRC to act? One is legal mean, then is a persuasion, the third one will be the accepting the UN mandate or bringing the state to the ICG. Okay, these are the mandates of the UNHRC. Now tell me one thing, if these are the importance of UNHRC, but despite this thing, the UN Refugee Convention, it means UNHCR, is under criticism because of selective action, because of non-action in particular cases. In 1992, when Yugoslovakia breakdown, there was very less concern for the people of Yugoslovakia. Okay, so this is one of them, selective action. Ultimately, UNHCR is of member countries, and that member countries contribute for the human rights, and most of the countries are the authoritarian regime. Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, they are the members of, they have the responsibility to protect the human rights. Dichotomy is this, they themselves violating the human rights in their own country. Xinjiang, Chechnya in the Russia. Then in Saudi Arabia, if you see the ban on the women, this is the response. This is the dichotomy of the UNHCR regime. Now we are going to furthermore discuss what exactly the criticism and challenges faced by the UNHCR. Okay, the action related failure in the Rwandan crisis, though supported but not in that domain. Botswana has inability to protect the IDP effectively, the OCA, UCA, particularly their own. See, if you see in the recent Gaza crisis, even the UN officials has been targeted by the Israel IDF, Israel Defense Forces, and this becomes a very triggering point, and this should not happen because they are the promoters and they act as a bridge of the peace. And you are, Miss Israel, attacking the UN system, UN officials, and in this domain also UNHCR is facing issues, not acting against the Israel. This is one of the criticism. And the fourth criticism will be related to its mandate. Even there are countries who are not part of the UN Refugee Convention, and the definition of refugee itself in the UN Refugee Convention is very narrow. It is related to just ethnic cleansing, border, but it does not include the climate refugees. The climate refugees in Sahel region, if you see, is the new category of refugees, and this climate refugee is not identified under the refugee convention, and there are million people are suffering from so-called starvation, hunger, and no legal protection. Western Africa, that's why Sahel region, most of the Western African countries have under the military rule or they are under the coup. Okay, because of this reason only, so it is very paramount to redefine the what exactly the refugee mean. Similarly, the victims of terrorist attack are not addressed properly under the UN Refugee Convention, the definition itself. Okay, these are the challenges faced by the UNHCR Refugee Convention. Now, even the staff member and everything, there are even the staff shortages there, fund crisis is there, because if UNHCR act against the particular country, that country will stop to fund the UNHCR. This is the one of the issue. Most of the budget for the UNHCR comes from the voluntary donations. Now, this much is issues are going on, and UNHCR have very big responsibility. That responsibility needs to be upheld, needs to be protected. So what we can do? So now we are going to discuss what exactly the UNHCR can do to promote its mandate and uphold the international law and protect the human rights. First one is expand the definition of the refugees. As adopted in the 1951 convention, the definition is narrowed, that expanded bit in the 1967, but post 1967 there is no as such substantive amendment in the refugee convention. Okay, and give flexibility to the state. First will be the expansion of the refugee definition, the second will be the give flexibility to the state, don't make it mandatory of non-refoulement policy. If you know the refoulement and non-refoulement policy, these are the principles of the UN Refugee Convention, and because of this reason, India is not a signatory of the UN Refugee Convention. World's largest democracy, world's largest populous country is not a member of UN Refugee Convention, is shows how exactly the issues of UNHCR is facing. So if they want India should be the part, then UN Refugee Convention should be amended, and it makes to the case basis. Okay, this will be the second. Third will be the structural autonomy should be provided to the UNHCR, and it should act in a universal manner, is irrespective of the what exactly and where exactly the human rights violation is happening. Fourth thing will be, there was a criticism of UNHCR, they are not providing the fund, they are not providing the food and basic minimum requirement in the Gaza Strip. So irrespective of the religion, irrespective of the reason, UNHCR should uphold its mandate by providing the particular the basic minimum requirement, health facility, then the food facility to the people who are in the need, or just documentation is also important. And UNHCR should act on the refugee of the Rohingyas, the refugees of the Gaza, then the Syrian refugee also there was the issue. So in this particular contentious issue, UNHCR should act in overall broader perspective to make it more relevant. Okay, so this is the way forward for the UNHCR. And as I mentioned, there are questions, there had been questions on this particular topic in the prelims also and mains also, 2020, 2008, then 2021. So do look into this all the issues, what exactly the UN refugee, what the refugee means, the what India stand, and mention the example. So your answer will be more comprehensive, your answer will be more holistic, that will make you, that will give you, at least that will fetch you the good marks. Okay, this was our overall discussion. Now you can go through the exactly decentralization, this way forward, the same point I have discussed. Okay, so we have discussed today UN, its mandate, its organs, and ways to make it more relevant. Okay, then we have discussed the UNHCR. Okay, its mandate and its success example role, its criticism, and way forward. Go through this convention, go through the UN system, because this is important for your prelims also, mains also. There is no as such difference between the prelims and mains, but do write some certain points for the prelims and certain points for the mains. Now come to, we have concluded our discussion. Last point I want to discuss, in same manner what I am teaching here, same way we are implementing in our Sankalp Sarthi mentorship programming for the prelims, for the mains, for integrated. Here in this particular programming, we are providing you dedicatedly one-to-one mentorship also, daily target also, daily procedure. Our this Sankalp Sarthi mentorship programming has been become the revolutionary. There are and many students are enrolling. If any one of you dedicatedly want to do justice with their preparation in 2026, do join our this Sankalp Sarthi means Sankalp Sarthi mentorship programming. There are different four verticals are there in the Sankalp Sarthi. One is exclusively for the forest services, one is exclusively for the prelims, one is exclusively for the mains, and fourth component of this particular Sankalp Sarthi program is integrated prelims cum mains. As I am once again repeating, this prelims and mains is not a different, both are the same one study approach. We are following the one study approach, so kindly make a note of this. If you are want to do justice with your preparation, do join our Sankalp Sarthi mentorship. Until tomorrow, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.